This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman as we return to our exclusive interview with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. I went to London and spoke to him inside the Ecuadorian embassy there on Memorial Day. Can you talk about the documents you have released around Libya and the immigrants that are trying to escape?
A secret plan was constructed by the defense ministers of Europe, the defense ministers from the various countries. The plan was led by the UK and Italy. And that plan, authored on the 13th of May, is what we have released. Now, it calls for a military intervention in Libya to destroy refugee boats before they leave port from Libya coming to Europe, and also for other attacks on the people who provide the services of conducting the boats, called, of course, in that plan, people smugglers, and they're necessary to stop their network.
You said destroy the boats? What do you mean?
That's right. Before the refugees get into the boats, destroy the boats. And so, of course, this involves potential infringements of Libyan sovereignty, destroying boats in port.
What do you mean destroying? Blowing them up?
Blowing them up, sabotaging them, destroying them through military means is what is specified in the document.
How would they know if there are people in them?
Well, they may not. They may conduct surveillance operations to detect people. They may be unconcerned with people. The way that they're talking about the people smugglers in the document is such that you have the impression that the people smugglers themselves would be a military target. The infrastructure, specifically boats, but their broader infrastructure also appears to be a military target. So, for example, the systems that repair boats or who are involved in collecting together the refugees. These seem like they would also be military targets.
And whose documents are these?
This is a classified document from the European Union, from the EU Military Committee, and the EU Military Committee is the defence ministers of the European Union. The document was led by the United Kingdom and Italy, and it will be Italy who is leading the on-the-ground. It'll be Italy who is militarily coordinating the on-the-ground efforts.
And in the documents, the concerns about what this will look like, the so-called optics of the situation?
Yes, there's a layout for a media information operations at the same time. Very significant concern about the optics, about where there's media scrutiny of the EU for killing people or false reports of killing people. They say, where the EU has actually killed people in this operation. So they are intending to at least risk killing people in blowing up these boats. I guess from if we now pull back a bit, where's this coming from? Well, it's no surprise that the UK was involved in the draft. Since the 7th, with the new Conservative government here having a majority, we've seen a very strong push along a Conservative agenda against migrants, against pulling out of some parts of the EU, against retardation of the European Court of Human Rights. From the Italian perspective, they have to deal with the migrants that come across. Now, this will be the first time that the EU as a military force, not NATO, but the EU is engaged in hostilities. So it's quite significant from the perspective of what the EU is going to look like as a military force. And if you think of Libya, there's a question of what do these EU nations want with Libya? Well, remember, Libya was largely Hillary's war. That came out that in fact the Pentagon was pushing against it, Hillary was pushing for it. From the American side, there wasn't unity in pursuing the prosecution in Libya because the Pentagon was worried about the Gaddafi environment, had that been set up enough, for exactly the same reasons, the exact same lessons were learned in Iraq. Now, there was a considerable European push for war in Libya as well, from Italy, from France, and from the United Kingdom, to get at Libyan oil. Deals were done in terms of splits with the Libyan rebels, the splits that Italy would have, the splits that France would have. So we may also be looking at an excuse to get on to the shoreline of Libya. They will have established a breach of Libyan sovereignty. They will be engaging in destruction of these boats and the people smuggling operations on Libyan soil.
And the documents address the Western-backed groups within Libya and what they feel about this?
It has come out publicly when some versions of this plan have been spoken about in the media. The plan hasn't come out, but versions of it have been spoken about. That the groups that the West says is the government of Libya, if you like, those factions around Benghazi, the Libyan foreign minister says that this should not be tolerated. Of course, Libyans could not accept the prevention of Libyans seeking refuge being pursued by jihadists. It's really a very new situation. It's new in terms of the EU acting as a force in this manner, acting as a force against refugees, against refugee boats, acting as a force, in effect, to assist ISIS. These are people that have been driven out of Libya by jihadists of various factions, including ISIS. So I find it quite a dangerous precedent. Now, having once established themselves on the northern shore of Libya, there's a question about then what happens. Presumably EU troops or EU agents or EU warships on the shore of Libya are going to receive some kind of resistance occasionally, and they will meet that resistance. And that could then well snowball into an invasion of Libya, and that may, I must speculate, that may be part of the vision.